probably hasn't escaped your notice that Tesla aren't exactly everyone's flavour of the month at the moment. We see in our comment section a lot of people suggesting that they're moving away from the company because they don't want the association with its CEO Elon Musk. And of course, you know, from the point of view of the company itself, there are many shareholders that have been quite outspoken about their lack of faith and, dare I suggest, his political alignment. Now, in fairness, it's not just that though. You know, Tesla as a company, a once dominant force in the electric car world, while still selling a lot of cars, don't get me wrong, aren't exactly churning out new models. The Model 3 and the Model Y have had a recent facelift, and they're still good cars, and you know, in all fairness. But the Model S and the Model X, you know, they're two cars, are getting quite long in the tooth. And in the UK, they're only available on left-hand drive. So effectively in the UK market, Tesla are just a two-car company. And if you're starting to upset a lot of your customers by your political leanings, what are you going to do? Because let's be honest, there are plenty of other manufacturers out there willing to take your place at the top of the tree. And one of those companies is BYD. Because here in the UK, they're about to launch their 5th new model in just 2 years and their 4th battery electric model. And this could be the most important one of them all. Welcome to this week's road test review. Welcome to the new BYD Sealion 7, and as always, welcome to AutoEV. Now, before I get started on this week's road test review of BYD's new Sealion 7, it is of course the time where I would just ask a small favour of you, if you don't mind. I know I keep asking it, but it is important to us. Could you just make sure you are subscribed to the AutoEV channel, please? Then once you've done that, then press the little bell button that's down below, because that's the way you'll be notified when the next video is uploaded and it's gone live. Once you watch the review, if you enjoy it, and I sincerely hope that you do, make sure you give it a little thumbs up, and of course, as always, don't forget, leave us your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think about the cars featured on the channel, such as the BYD Sealion 7, and of course, on the AutoEV channel overall. So BYD, their success cannot be overstated. They are the global behemoth when it comes to new energy vehicles. Nobody produces and sells more than these guys across the globe. But they've been fairly new to the UK. In fact, it was only just 2 years ago that they entered into the UK market space with one car, the Atto 3, a small electric crossover. But since then, we've had more models. And believe it or not, in January 2025, with just 4 models available, one of them being a hybrid, so 3 battery electric vehicles, they took 1% share of the UK market. These guys are selling more in the UK than Citroën, Honda, Seat, Dacia, and there's more to come. This year we're going to see 2 more important models from them, and this is the first of them, the Sealion 7, a D-segment SUV. In other words, this medium sector that's sort of taken over as the sort of, did I suggest maybe the default family size of car, you know, which so far every manufacturer seems to have a foothold in, but especially Tesla, because their Model Y is a big seller. So, is this the car that's going to, dare I suggest, end the Tesla's dominance in this market sector? Is it good enough to do that? Well, of course, the only way we're going to find that out is by putting it through the road test that actual car buyers trust when it comes to choosing their next electric vehicle. And that's the AutoEV one, of course. However, as always, let's take a brief look at the main points on the car before we start the full review. So as I mentioned, this is BYD's 5th model to launch in the UK since they arrived here in 2023, following in the footsteps of the Atto 3, the Dolphin, the Seal and the Seal U DMI. It's a medium-sized D-segment electric SUV ready to compete with the Tesla Model Y, Skoda Enyaq, Volkswagen's ID4, Ford's Explorer, amongst many others. It has a choice of 2 battery sizes, either an 82.5 kilowatt-hour one for a range of up to 300 miles, or a 91.3 kilowatt-hour one for a range of up to 312 miles, depending on model. 3 models are available, offering single or dual motor configurations. And prices start at around £47,000 and climb to just under £59,000, depending on specification and options chosen. Now, what I find quite interesting is those prices. Because in some respects, with the Chinese brands, we've come to expect, dare I suggest, them being slightly less expensive than their European counterparts, and that tends to be their leading entrant into the market space, including BYD themselves. But this isn't a cheap and cheerful budget model. This is priced bang in the heartland of that D segment SUV. So does that show a confidence, or dare I suggest, a complacency on BYD's part? Time to find out in another AutoEV road test review. Now, as always, we start with styling. And I think you'd agree that the new Sealion 7 certainly follows the same trend in terms of its design language that the BYD Seal has, and of course the Seal U DMI, and obviously we'll see from other models as they come out. It's a D segment SUV, as I say, we'll talk about size and stuff a little bit later, but the front end of it certainly ties it in with the rest of the family. Maybe apart from the Dolphin and the Atto 3, they're slightly more separate sort of like models that seem to be over there somewhere, but this sort of like Sealion genre thing they've got going on in the medium sector, all the cars follow a very, very similar design. And that is a sort of X motif. You know, you can see there and there. That's the sort of X motif that BYD talk about. Of course, you get these swooping sort of lights here, where you've got the turn indicators and DRLs here. Obviously, this swoop underneath the main headlights itself, standard LEDs. You get the 2 lamp units in there, but there's also a smaller lamp unit in there to help with cornering. So at lower speeds at cornering, you've got another little lamp unit that helps in there. There's some good airflow sort of management coming around the side there. As you can see, these veined areas here that channel air and then take out through the wheel arch and then down the side of the car as well. It's quite tall at the front, you know, but again, it seems to translate well into this style of car. Although I say it's quite tall, it's got quite a sort of sharp pointed nose on the car. I like the fact you now get the BYD badge sort of like almost inset into the actual nose cone itself. And of course, there's loads of tech on the car. They're a technology company, so you can't expect anything less than a full raft of technological advances on this car, which we'll get onto. But of course, you get things such as a forward-facing camera there. You get your sensor for your radar-guided cruise control down there. All your airflow management's done underneath there, so as you can see, that's like all the cooling for the battery done at the bottom there. But I think it's a handsome-looking thing, certainly from the front. And as I say, I like the BYD Seal. I like the Sports Saloon. I think that's got a real sort of like look about it, and it was probably the best-looking car. But this is quite good. I like this. We're off to a good start so far, folks. So, D segment SUV, 4.8 metres in length with a 2.9 metre wheelbase. Okay, not dissimilar to something like, say, a Hyundai Ioniq 5, you know, Skoda Enyaq, those style of cars. So that's the type of car that we're talking about. Okay, 19-inch wheels come as standard on the Comfort model, and then you move into the Design, which this one is, and then top of the range Excellent, which get 20-inch alloys as standard. So alloys standard across the range. You get your ubiquitous sort of like cladding around those wheel arches. They're very, very similar to look at, bar the different style of alloy wheels. There's no real way sort of like to tell them apart. So it's not like, you know, the base models getting unpainted door mirrors or things like that. So they're very clean looking and standard looking across all 3 trim levels. So it's just really the wheel sizes that differ on the side profile. Of course, you get privacy glass in the back here. You get the flush mounted door handles that pop out when you unlock or lock the car. Again, some tech there, some side mounted cameras just on the sort of like the door mirrors there. You can also open the car very different ways. You can do it with the key fob, you can do it via your phone and that. You can also do it by touching the phone against the mirror on the other side with this NFC, because like card reader style. So there's lots of digital keys, so there's lots you can do. There's a huge amount of tech on it. But it's slightly more coupe-ish at the back end rather than upright, you know, like the Skoda Enyaq. So it's more that sort of like rear sort of like sloping end, a bit like maybe say the Peugeot 3008. That's the sort of car it reminds me of at the back here, that more coupe, rakish coupe style. You get the twin spoilers at the back there, but this top one here, you can see, you'll not be able to see it from there, but I'll put some B-roll up, the way the airflow just comes in underneath that and back down across the screen onto top of that ducktail spoiler. But as I say, I think it's quite a handsome looking car. I quite like the look of the car. It's quite striking. And whilst I say it is that sort of generic D segment SUV, it's not really copying anything. It's setting its own design language out that BYD seem to be doing. And I think it's a good looking car. Now, when you come round the back, it's a bit like the front. There's elements of it that you can see from the other models in the BYD range, such as the Seal. The water droplet tail lights, which are here, which do a nice little animation when you lock and unlock the car. You see what I mean about that spoiler, how you get the airflow that comes down underneath it there, but then hits this ducktail spoiler on top of the tailgate there, you know, so to keep the back end of the car down. No wiper. Of course, it's one of these coupe-like SUVs, so there's no rear wiper. High-level rear brake light there. No build your dreams, thankfully. None of that malarkey going across the back, just the big BYD badge there. This is a mid-ranking all-wheel drive design model, so you get the little all-wheel drive badge there, the BYD Sealion 7 there, and you get 4.5S there. Now, if you didn't know what this was in the back of a BYD, believe it or not, that is its 0 to 60 time. 4.5 seconds. That's what they do. Not sure why they do that, but they do, and that's what that means there. Okay, right, so coming further down here, we've obviously got a reversing camera, and then you've got just this nice bit of black plastic bumper, which protrudes past the, sort of like the painted area of the car here. So it's a practicality side of things. You know, they've thought about that too. And of course you get reversing sensors, low set number plate down there. Yeah, and that's your lot. As I say, I think it's quite a good looking car, this. I really like it. I think it, you know, as I say, they're 10 a penny this style of car, this D-segment SUV, and there's a lot more of them being that coupe-like styling. Like I say, the Peugeot E3008, Skoda Enyaq Coupe, Volkswagen ID.5, the Ford Capri, those style of cars. But I still think this cuts its own dash. It's not a clone of anything. They really have got their own design language going on, this oceanic theme thing going. And I really like it. I especially love the lights. I think they look really cool. But it doesn't really matter what I think, does it? Let's be honest, I'm hardly an aesthetics genius. But you might be. And you might be out there thinking that you might want to buy this car. So what do you think about it? Because that's the important thing. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Would you have this over a Tesla Model Y? Or a Ford Capri? Or a Volkswagen ID.5? Or a Skoda Enyaq? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Practical? Yeah, it's not bad actually. 520 litres of boot space. Smaller than a Skoda Enyaq, but still a good amount for a family car, I'd say. If you fold down the 60-40 split rear seat, that will take total capacity up to 1,789 litres. So yeah, I think that's pretty good in fairness. Plus there's a boot up at the front, which I'll show you in a second. Suffers a little bit maybe in some respects, like my Genesis, the Kia, the Hyundai, with a slightly shallower style of boot. Do you know what I mean? Just to that parcel shelf. Some boots are a bit deeper than that, so that's probably where it misses out on the volume. But it's a good flat floor that's in there and a nice square shape. You know, there's not really much of a problem. The height itself, well, that's sort of my sort of like thigh level there, so there's a little bit of lift up, but it is an SUV, I suppose. But it's a flat floor into it, in fairness. You know, it's not a drop down. Excuse me, you do have a variable height boot floor, but it only varies it by that much. So I don't really know why you need that. I mean, there's just a little bit extra room underneath there. I suppose in some respects you can you? Does that fit that bag? No, it doesn't. Look at that, it doesn't even fit that bag. But there is a well down here for cable storage, which is excellent. So you don't need to have these bags in there because they will fit in that well, he says. So there you go. And as I say, you've got your nice 60-40 split on the rear seat. There's some nice little bits, you know, in terms of the chrome lashing points. That's nice, you know, and again, the sort of like the chromed handle, which doesn't feel cheap. You know, that feels a nice quality thing to sort of like hold. You've got other little things, like there's a little hook over there for hanging a shopping bag. Nothing on that side. There's no power takeoff though in the boot, funnily enough, which is maybe lacking a little bit, considering, you know, that obviously what some of the electrical architecture is like. But you do have a little pocket over that side there. This particular one's got the Dyno audio system fitted with a couple of speakers and a big amp in the back. But in fairness, for a family car of this sector, I think that's pretty much what you'd expect. Rear seat space. Pardon the French, bloody loads of it. Look at this, it's huge back here. Absolutely massive. I'm 5'8", that's my driving position. I have got acres of room back here. Now, this is built on BYD's E-Platform 3.0, a slightly modified version of that. And I did say there's a lot of tech involved in the car, and there is. And because obviously it's a bespoke EV platform, there's lots to talk about when it comes to that. And what BYD have done, it's their Blade battery, so their innovative Blade battery is very, very safe. It's LFP battery as well, so no harmful cobalts and stuff used in it too. And it's actually part of the car's structure. So BYD are one of the manufacturers that really have pioneered this style of sort of like building, because they started as a battery company. So if anyone knows about how batteries to be built, these guys do. So it forms part of the car's actual structure. So what you don't have is a floor pan, and then a battery. The battery is the floor pan, and then the structures onto that. So it's integral into the whole car, which makes it very safe, which makes it very rigid, and also gives you a lot of room back here because you're not stacking a battery on top of something. So your legs don't feel pushed up, basically. Do you know why legs do not feel pushed up? So I've got loads of space behind somebody my height driving. Look, I can get my feet underneath the seat, and that's in its low down position. Tons of knee room, loads of headroom for me. I would say if you're starting to get above the 6 foot, you might just find your head just touching the roof line, and as it starts to, the roof just starts to slope back just above your head here. However, you can recline the back seats. This is it in its furthest reclined. You can tip it forward a little bit more to give you a more upright luggage bit in the back, or to clear more headroom here. But it's not very comfortable when it's most upright position, but it is reclinable. So you do have a reclinable rear seat, which is good. Storage. Oh, sorry, I should also say, look, if you wanted to get a third person in, as long as they're my height, absolutely no problem at all. Completely flat floor as you'd expect. And the rear bench, whilst it's nice for the outer two, actually it's not bad for the middle person. The only thing I would say is, just where the armrest goes, you've just got that, it just pushes you forward a little bit. So storage. You've got two upper pockets here for slipping devices into, you know, like phones or Kindles. You've got a bigger mat pocket down there for maybe say a bigger iPad or a laptop or something. The door bins, yeah, you've got door bins that are shaped for water bottles, and they've got rubber lining on the bottom. Thank you, BYD. That's good. And then when you fold the armrest down, there's another evidence here. Look, you've got the fold-out cup holders here, and then a bit more storage in there. And this just, the way things just seem to work, and the way the build quality feels really good. It's BYD's best product as far as that's concerned, and they've been very good so far. Silly things, like look where the USBs are. Just this nice little damped hatch that just, you know, just beautifully, it opens just beautifully. That's really good. Heated rear seats on this model as well. As I say, this is a mid-spec model, so you still get heated rear seats in the car. And privacy glass. Now, you've also got this big panoramic glass sunroof. I've kept the blind closed because it's quite, there's a lot of sun out today in Milton Keynes. But they say this is the largest panoramic sunroof in its class. I'm not sure about that, in fairness, because the Tesla Model Y, I know it's got the central bar, but that feels really big on the inside. However, big sort of like panoramic glass sunroof. It's 2.1 metres square in overall area, and you've got this electric blind that covers it, obviously, when you're not using it. But yeah, this is massive in the back. A really, really big car. And that's obviously part, in fact, to that long wheelbase, and also for that battery technology, the way that it's actually packaged underneath the car. So yeah, this is excellent. Now, I was talking about the materials in the back there, and I said we'd talk a bit more about it up front. So before we move on to all the rest of it, let's just talk about the materials. Everything feels exceptional. I thought, you know, when they brought the Seal Saloon out and we had that car in, I went, God, this is really good. You know, in terms of, dare I suggest, and forgive me for it a little bit, the Chinese brands, where you do sort of have this idea that maybe in terms of quality they're not quite there yet. You know, there's still an element, you know, to get them to that price point. There are some areas that maybe don't feel as good as some of the European brands. That is not the case here with BYD. I have to say this is the best interior today in terms of, you know, in terms of quality. The Seal Saloon was brilliant. This is another step up from that. You know, leagues ahead of Tesla, leagues ahead. You know, as good, I would suggest, as things such as, you know, Kia, Hyundai. You know, it's that level now, these guys. Of all the Chinese brands, BYD are absolutely, you know, they're right up there. You know, you would get in this car and there's very little to complain about in terms of the quality of the materials. Everything has a soft touch to it. Now, if you go for the top of the range Excellence model, you get Napa leather as standard. You know, brilliant. This is the mid-spec car. This and the lead-in car get vegan leather as standard. So vinyl in other words. But I tell you what's nice and soft. And the seats themselves, You know, they're not the figure-hugging seats that maybe you first think of when you see the design of them. You know, they're not maybe as good as, say, the chairs you get in, say, the Skoda Enyaq or the Cooper Tavascan, you know, a car I've been driving recently. But they're good. You know, they are good. They are supportive, and they've got a lot of cushioning in them. And there's a lot of support underneath the back of your knees, you know, just underneath your thighs and stuff. So for longer drives, not that I managed to do a long drive today, but you know, I would think this is probably a real comfortable seat to do that in. So yeah, so that has to be commended. But the quality of materials is absolutely fantastic. So this sort of like leatherette materials up at the top of the dash with the stitching. You get this aluminium trim across the middle of the dashboard here, and then underneath it, it's a sort of almost like a neoprene, kind of almost wetsuit material like. I think we saw that in the little Dolphin. And it's just on the intersection of that door handle. That's quite cool. I quite like that. That's nice. What have you got here? So you've got a wireless phone charger here, which is a little vent underneath it. So it's a 50-watt wireless phone charger with a vent underneath to keep your phone cool. And in this area here is just for it's not a twin charger. It's just for laying stuff on there. There is some switch gear here, which I'm going to talk to you about now. So you've got things like hazards, blind spot monitoring, auto hold, automatic climate, your fan speed on and off, and full defrost for the front screen. There's a volume mode there. There's a little switch here for just, I don't actually know what that does. I'm just about to tell you what it does. What does that do? Oh, that's your brake energy recuperation. I've just realised that. That's what that does. So we'll talk about that when we're driving it. There's the drive mode button there, and there's your stop-start button there. So that is your physical buttons in terms of that. Plus you get some on the steering wheel, which means a lot of it's controlled through the screen. But we will move on to that in a second. You also get, he says, do you? You get variable height cup holders. Look at that. You push that down, put that bottle all the way down, or press the button. Oh. And it comes up to a higher. Don't know why you'd need to do that. I suppose if you had one of those big Starbucks cups or stuff like that, yeah. That's quite natty. And then you've got storage underneath this tunnel area here. Big storage bin in there, storage in the door bins. Again, like the back, they're rubber lined on the bottom. That pleases me. That's excellent. Right, so that's the interior in terms of the quality, in terms of the sort of the comfort. It's all good and all the rest of it. The one thing I'll say on the comfort side of things is the steering wheel. The only thing I've noticed is the steering wheel, at the angle the wheel's at, it does adjust for reach and for rake, okay? So you can do that, but it sort of comes out at an angle. So you're it's sloping away from you a little bit rather than being more flat. I'm not going to quite say it's bus-like, it's not as bad as that, but it's a bit more like maybe you'd expect from, say, an MPV rather than an SUV. Does that make sense? So that's the only thing I have noticed. It's still fine, it still adjusts, and it's still a nice wheel to hold, but it's just slightly angled, maybe a bit more away from you than you'd expect from one of its rivals. There we go. While we're here, let's talk about this. Physical buttons on the steering wheel here. So you've got cruise control buttons over here, media phone controls there. You can also, which is the first time they've done this, with the new digital display that BYD have got, the driver's display, you can now put the map into there as well, which is excellent. There's a lot of information going on in this screen here. Top of the range excellent model also gets head-up display. But you also, there's a lot of information going on here, so things like, and some of it I do wonder whether or not it is actually necessary, you know. So you know, there's a trip meter there, but also has your tyre pressure monitoring on there. That's the type of thing I think could be buried in there. That's not something you really need to know there. A warning light, yes, but do I need to know the exact tyre pressures there all the time? Not really. So that could be pushed to the side there. But then there's an awful lot going on in this top display here, so you do need to take your eyes just to focus in a little bit on things like the speed, which is just a small numeric up there. Okay, so that's all I will say about that. Then you move across to the floating screen have they got, and as you would expect from a BYD, you can also rotate it as well. So you can go from it being landscape to it being portrait if you want. So it's their party piece, you know, they've got it in all their cars. The only thing I will say is this: it gets standard Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which is wireless, but you can't use Apple CarPlay, and I'm pretty sure obviously Android Auto either, when it's in the portrait mode, which I think's odd because you can consider you use an iPhone in the portrait mode normally. So I don't know why. But anyway, you can't use it in the portrait mode, so you have to flip it around to be in the landscape mode, which I sort of prefer anyway. And actually then it doesn't interrupt the view of the bottom of the windscreen. If you turn it around so it's portrait, it does cut into the windscreen, and then the distance between the mirror and the top of the screen is narrowed quite a bit. So that's it. But if you do prefer it having it the other way around, you can do it. Okay, right. So everything's controlled through the screen in terms of climate control as well, okay? So there's the temperature and stuff. And at first you go, oh, I don't know if I like that, Brian, because it's... What they do, however, is this. Now, if I do this right, look, if you use 3 fingers, you can alter the temperature if you go up and down. If you use your 3 fingers side to side, you can alter your fan speed. Now that's not bad in fairness, I don't mind that. You know, I mean, again, I'd still prefer a turning knob, but you know, at least you've got some physical, you don't have to take your eyes off the road in terms of using the climate control if you want to just adjust temperature or the fan speed. So I do think that's a good thing. It also has quite good voice recognition. Now, in fairness, I'm not going to do it, but they did a demonstration at the presentation this morning where the guy came in and said, you know, various things. Oh, we'll give it a wee try. You say, hey BYD.
Hello.
I'm hungry.
Here's what I found. Which would you like?
The second one looks good.
Okay. Caffeine machine. The bowl. Starting navigation.
What? I never get these things to work. That's really good. So that's it. So it gave you a list of what was up there, you know, in terms of when I said I was hungry. It gave me a list of various different things. So like, you know, a Starbucks over there, or a restaurant over there, or the caffeine machine for like further down the road. And then you just say, oh, the second one looks nice. Right, okay, I'll take the second one on the list. And you can do various different things with it, such as, hey BYD.
Hello.
Open my window.
All right.
Okay, so it knows it's me that's sitting in the seat because it can hear where the voice is coming from. So it knows, I don't have to say the driver's window, I just have to say my window, and it opens it. So if you're a passenger, they could do the same, you know, open my window, and it would drop the passenger seat because it recognises the fact that it's them that's sitting, you know, the voice is coming from over that side of the car. I mean, you know, I'm not a big lover of touchscreen, folks, but I have to say, in terms of its tech, that is pretty good. That is, I'm pretty impressed with that. The screen itself, yeah, it's okay. You know, it's. I think you've got things such as inbuilt Spotify. I think, does it have? Yeah, Amazon Music there as well. As I say, you've got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and you can do various different things through it as well. So you can set things up obviously through it. I'm not going to go through it all, but you know what I'm saying. You can go into your car settings. Oh, I do want to talk about that a minute. And then the other thing you can do as well is you can, let me just go back to where it was. If you swipe down from the screen, you can set up favourites up here. So it's not on this car, but for instance, vehicle control, where it is here, that could be your ADAS systems. So for switching off your lane keep assist, your speed limit warning, you know, so you've just got one swipe down and then a press and it comes. It might, I think it asks you to confirm it, but effectively it's only one step away from the main screen. So again, can't complain about that either. Okay, so yeah, again, I'm going to say it, in terms of the Chinese brands that have come in, that is by far the best that we've seen. You know, BYD are absolutely knocking it out of the park with that. The voice activation, the way the screen can move, it's fairly slick as well. Where is the navigation system, he says, after all that, there we go. So, you know, it's quite a fast I don't understand it all, but they were saying this morning what type of processor is in it, and it's one of the best you can get. It's very quick, it's very snappy, it just moves. So that is excellent. So yeah, fair play BYD, brilliant, can't complain at that. And then you've got things such as the shift lever here, you know, as I say, this sort of almost this crystal topped, almost not unlike BMW and Volvo do. So for, you know, pulling in that there. There's your cameras there. It also has a remote parking thing, so you can actually get out the car and park it. As I say, you've got things as well, such as the blind spot camera as well, you know, like Hyundai, Kia, Genesis and now Tesla do as well. So when you indicate left, you get an image from that camera there along the side of the car in case there's a cyclist coming alongside. So that's superb. As I say, the only real criticism I have of it, as I say, it takes a lot of time just to get used to the amount of information that's on the driver's display. But that is it. Oh, and the steering wheel feels a bit odd the way it's kind of angled away from you. But I think that's just, you get used to that. But it's comfortable. It's incredibly well equipped as standard. I mean, pretty much everything comes as standard on it, and I'll go through specs and stuff with you in the pricing section. The tech on it is as easy to use as any of this stuff is, you know, and actually it's a lot better than a lot of the other Chinese brands that have come in, and dare I suggest better than some of the Europeans, in fairness to them. You know, that voice control, I've not used a voice control that's as good as that, especially with my stupid accent. And there is enough sort of like physical controls for things like, you know, volume, you know, switching on, answering calls and stuff. You don't have to use a touch screen, but when you do have those shortcuts as well by swiping the screen with 3 fingers. So on the whole, best BYD interior we've had from the company. Fantastic quality, nicely designed, easy to get on with technology, just the right amount of technology, and a fabulous build quality from the car. So as I say, BYD's best interior, but actually I also think one of the best interiors in its class. Now BYD, as I say, started as a battery technology company, so if anyone's going to do batteries right, it's going to be these guys, which they have. You know, this blade battery is very innovative. I'll start again. It's very innovative in its construction. It's very safe, the way it's integrated into the car structure and all the rest of it, blah, blah, blah. But it's not exactly outstanding when it comes to range and stuff like that. It's okay. It's sort of middle ground in some respects, okay? You get a choice of 2 batteries with the car, okay? So if you opt for the Comfort, which is a single motor car, that's the lead-in car to the range, or this Design, which is an all-wheel drive car, you get an 82.5 kilowatt hour battery. And that's going to get, and they're LFP batteries, so if you're interested in battery chemistry, that's what they are, okay? Lithium iron phosphate, means there's less cobalt and harmful stuff inside them. Right, so according to WLTP figures, you should see 300 miles out of the Comfort model, or 283 miles in this Design model, because obviously it's more powerful with the dual motors, okay? If you go to the top of the range Excellence model, it's a dual motor car and it gets the biggest battery, which is a 91.3 kilowatt hour battery. And BYD claim that will give you 312 miles of range. So in some respects, for the size of batteries, I sort of expected a little bit more range, if I'm being blunt about it, okay? But there are other benefits with the BYD, in fairness. So comfort and design in terms of charging speeds is 150 kilowatts. Again, nothing outstanding, but 10 to 80% charge is 32 minutes. So my benchmark is always 30 minutes. Anything under 30 minutes is really good. Anything over that is all right. If you go as far as 40 minutes, you're out of the game. But so it's 32 minutes, okay? If you go for the Excellence, however, that gets a much higher charging speed, 230 kilowatts, and that reduces that time to 24 minutes. So that's the best when it comes to the actual sort of ultra rapid charging, okay? Onboard 11 kilowatt charger standard. It's pretty much is these days in some respects for this class of car. But if you're using a more likely 7 kilowatt wall box, then you're going to be charging at 13.5 hours for the smaller battery for this one car, 15 hours for the larger one, okay? Other 2 things to mention is a heat pump standard across the range, and all cars come with vehicle to load functionality as well. Right, depending obviously on what model you go for will depend on the power level you have. Now, both cars, the single motor and the dual motor car, are powerful and fast, I would suggest. So a single motor car has 308 horsepower, which will do 0 to 60 in around about 6.7 seconds, which I think is plenty fast enough for this style of car. If you do want the dual motor, like this one I've got, that will put the power up to 522 horsepower, and that will slice the 0 to 60 time way down to 4.5 seconds, which is, well, fast, I think. Do you need it? I don't think you do personally in some respects. The only downside is, the only reason I would suggest you go for the Excellence model, because remember, they're all really well equipped to standard. There's not one of them that's not well equipped. You know, the only reason that you would go for that Excellence is if you do need dual motors, you know, traction maybe in the winter time, or you live, you know, somewhere that gets maybe snow, or you know, you live up a country lane or whatever, and just having the 4-wheel drive would be handy. Or you're a bit of a mile monster and you do want to max out, you know, sort of like as much range as you can, because that's the only one that gets the big battery. If they did a single motor with the big battery, that would be the one I would suggest that's the one to have. That would be the one I would go for. Right, how does it feel out on the road? Well, it feels absolutely fine in some respects. It's not perfect. It isn't perfect. I would say there's a slight, how do I put it? There's a slight disconnection with you as a driver to the car. It feels a little bit vague in some respects when you up the pace. It's very comfortable. It's a very comfortable car. The suspension is a little bit on the soft side in the sense. So in other words, they've tuned it more for the comfort. But you see, going over those speed bumps there's just that little bit of bounce that you get in the car. See what I mean? And because the seat is, dare I suggest, so well padded as well, that over exaggerates that. You know, so you do feel like it just bounces a wee bit on you. You know, you just go, oh, it's like being on a bouncy castle, or I'm told a waterbed. So that's the first thing. So there's a slight disconnection with it, and it's the same with the steering. Okay, the steering it's not vague in the sense that you don't know where the wheels are pointed, but it's not designed for dynamics. Okay, it's not a car that you buy if you really are after the sort of like the dynamics, the dynamic drive that you can sometimes get with some of these cars. You know, like say maybe the Cupra Taviscan and it's VZ model. You know, that's a slightly more driver's car. The Kia EV6, much more of a sharper driver's tool. You know, at the point where you're at the top level excellence model, you know, you're knocking on the door of £60,000, and for not a lot more, you're into a Hyundai Ioniq 5N if you want the dynamics, or a second-hand one of those, do you know? So from that point of view, it's just lacking that little bit of dynamic edge. But as I say, there's no doubt about it, it's set up more for comfort than it is for speed from that point of view. So there's a vagueness to it, to the steering. You know, again, it turns the car, it doesn't give you a lot of feedback, but it's not overtly light. Now, I reviewed the Sealion DMI over on my House of Cars channel, which obviously we do for combustion engine cars, and that's a car whose steering feels just too light, too vague, too light. This isn't. This has got a little bit more feel to it, you know, but I wouldn't say it's the most communicative of steering racks that I've had in a car. I'm going to leave that there, okay? That's what we've got there. The brakes are fine. The brakes are absolutely fine. There's a reasonable amount of pressure. You know, when you're not using, there's no one pedal driving with it. You've either got regular recuperation or high. It is regular or high. Standard or high, sorry, not regular or high. Standard or high. And I'm struggling really to feel much of a difference between them, if I'm blunt about it, okay? So there's no one pedal driving. I don't mind that. I'm not that fussed about one pedal driving, but I know some people are, especially in the electric car world. So you don't really have that with this car. But when you use the pedal, it's got quite a nice feel to it. It's got quite a nice progressive feel to the pedal. You know, there's a reasonable bite to it. You know, so you've got that nice sort of like linear action with it, and I say you can just feel the brakes actually bite. But there's that thing I was saying about that slightly softer suspension. You know, so I'm just in a wee bit of line of traffic here. If I come to a stop, you just feel the car rock that little bit, you know. It could just do with dialing up the spring rates, I think. You know, I could just do with dialing that up a little bit just to stop that. There we go. So that's that. The driving position. My only criticism of the driving position is this steering wheel. And I must admit, having now been driving the car for quite a while, it is starting to be quite noticeable. There's a noticeable lean forward on it. Do you know what I mean? You know, when it's not, as I say, it's not like you're driving a bus or a van, but it's not quite, it's more like an MPV than an SUV. And in some ways as well, that sort of like, that means that discourages you from trying to drive it in a slightly more dynamic fashion as well, because by the time you get up there, you don't quite have the same sort of hold on the wheel that maybe you would have on a standard wheel that's got angled more towards you as a driver. So there is that as well. So that's one thing to take into account. The driving modes, well, you've got the usual suspects of eco, normal and sport, but you've also got a snow mode as well, which will obviously limit torque and just allow you to be a bit more prodigious with the throttle and stuff like that. Going into the sport mode, okay, so this is the thing about it. It does feel quite quick, the car, but not neck-snappingly fast. But it's not in the same way, you know, I've been saying a lot about cars recently, they've got that real mechanical feel to the throttle. It's not that either. It just doesn't feel that quick. You know, when they talked about, you know, the power this morning, oh, we've got all this power coming through the car and all the rest of it. Great, brilliant, fantastic. Doesn't feel neck-snappingly fast. And also, when you come off the throttle, there's like a lag slightly as well. When you come off it, it just seems to just lag before it then starts to slow down again. Like it's just catching up with you a little bit. So from a dynamics point of view, let's just say that it's not at the top of the class, okay? It's not there. From a comfort point of view, is it? Yes and no. The suspension just doesn't give me that sort of, you know, as I say, where you've got that slightly kind of rocky feel, that slight bounce to it. It's not comfortable that way, in the sense that, as I say, sitting on a waterbed is nice and soft, but it's not necessarily going to be a most comfortable night's sleep. You actually want a slightly firmer mattress that holds you in place a little bit better. Does that make sense? And that's the sort of thing that I'm getting at with this car. It is a reasonably good car. It is a good addition to the class. It doesn't go straight to the top of the class, however. And there are areas where I do feel that BYD should maybe have made a bit more of an effort towards it. When you drive, say, the Seal Saloon, for instance, and you know, against, say, I don't know, a Model 3 or an Ioniq 6, a Hyundai Ioniq 6, you know, that is very much, you know, right up there. This isn't far off, but I don't think it's as close to the top of the class as maybe BYD had maybe hoped for in some respects. I did wonder whether or not this was going to be the most accomplished product, you know, the best one that they've done yet, given that every model of BYD that I've driven, you know, every time I do drive another BYD, you just go, yeah, you can see the progress they're making. They have made a lot of progress with this car in terms of design, build, quality of materials, no doubt about that. That cannot be taken away from them, because, you know, the quality of this interior, the level of comfort, the level of, you know, sort of like a refinement, the level of just, you know, the quality of the stuff around you does not feel like, you know, a less expensive car than some. In fact, in some respects, it feels better than some more expensive cars in this class. So that can't be taken away from them. But I don't think this is the best. I was expecting it to drive as the best product yet. It's not quite the best. I still think the Seal Saloon is the best product that they've given us so far, you know, in terms of its class. But it's not far off. It's not far off. It is good. The other thing that I will say that is slightly annoying is the ADAS systems are quite intrusive, as they are with a lot of these cars, in fairness, do you know what I mean? But it's things like, you know, you take your eye off the road, there's the camera there that's telling you that you're not paying attention all the time. You know, you can set all the things up to go in to turn them off, and a shortcut button, as I said to you earlier, that's not the problem. So it's not like they're buried. It's just that if you do leave them on, if you do like them and you do leave them on, they do make themselves known to you. You know, the tug of the wheel, the constant beeping and binging, you know, if you go over a speed limit, that type of thing. That's what I mean. So as I say, they're just that little bit too intrusive for me in that sense. But on the whole, this is a good car. It is a good car. It is a welcome addition to the class. It's not BYD's best product. I think the Seal Saloon's their best, but I think it's way above some of the other entrants into the class. I don't think it's necessary, unless you absolutely must have the all-wheel drive car, I don't think that's the one that I would probably go for. I think it's just, you know, at £58,000, £59,000, it's just that little bit too much. But otherwise, what you are left with is actually a good car. It's welcome in the class. There's a lot to like about it, but what I'm trying to say badly is there are better cars than it for the money, and dare I suggest, for less money as well. Right, let's go back to the start of the review when I spoke about the price, and I said it's not exactly a bargain, this car, and in some respects it's not, okay? So as I say, your range kicks off with the comfort model, okay? Single motor, smaller battery, £46,990, okay? Then you move up to the dual motor design model, which this car is, still with that slightly smaller battery, and that is £51,990. You top out with the Excellence all-wheel drive, so dual motor, big battery, job done. 58,990, okay? £59,000. Now in fairness, pretty much everything is standard across the entire range. Even from the base lead-in comfort model to the top of the range Excellence, there's a couple of things you don't get on the comfort model. You know, slightly smaller alloy wheels, you know, a couple of little bits on the inside, but very little. You get Napa leather on the Excellence, and that's it. But you know, the rotatable screen, the wireless Apple CarPlay, the Bluetooth, you know, the heated seats, ventilated seats in the front, you know, all of that stuff, standard, okay? So you do get an awful lot of car for your money. But as I say, it's not exactly the bargain price that maybe you were thinking that, did I suggest, some of these Chinese brands have been offering so far. BYD themselves, you know, when you think about the Little Dolphin and the Atto 3, they weren't exactly expensive cars in some ways in terms of their class. They were probably closer to the bottom end of the class in terms of price point. But this isn't. This is towards the top end. So is that, dare I suggest, a confidence about the product? Perhaps. You do, however, get a 6-year warranty with BYD in terms of the mechanical warranty on it, and of course you get the usual 8-year battery warranty on it with a guaranteed 70% state of health after that. I think it's over 100,000 miles. So that does give you a little bit of confidence. And in terms of dealerships, they are increasing their presence in the UK. I think they've got now over 60 retailers in the UK with quite a broad spread of coverage as well, and that's only going to continue to grow as well. So in terms of your after sales package, you shouldn't be too worried with regards to that. Now normally I don't bother using iPad for things such as the competition section. I just need it for the numbers to remind myself of the battery size and stuff. But there's now so many cars in this market sector, I just need this as a little prompt to make sure that I mention them all. It's a huge market sector. And of course the main one that they talk about is the Tesla Model Y, okay? Big selling car, good car in some respects. A lot of people like it. I'm not a fan myself, but it's a personal choice. But it's interesting the amount of people that are now stepping away from Tesla because of what's been said by its CEO, Mr. Musk, and because of, dare I suggest, his behaviour of recent times, shall we suggest. Now, we're not a political channel. We're not going to get involved in that. It's up to you guys, but we'll have to tell you about it. The car is there. It's the main competitor for this car. Okay, there you go. Right, interestingly as well, when we start talking about this being a Chinese brand, there's a couple of other Chinese brands that we need to also mention. One of which I'm going to be driving next week, another new entrant to the market, and that's the XPeng G6. Good looking car. I've been a passenger in one. I took one up the Goodwood Hill last year at the Festival of Speed. Oh, sorry, I was a passenger. I went up the hill in the Goodwood. I'm driving it next week, so I'll be interested to see what that car is like. So that's another entrant into the market space like BYD is. And another Chinese brand. And we're talking about Chinese brands, why don't we discuss Leap Motor, the C10. Now in fairness, it's not quite the same as this car. It's a bit more, it's a bit big, you know, in terms of its big full-size type of SUV. And I don't want to say, it is cheaper, it's cheaper to buy, but I don't want to call it a cheap or a budget car. It offers a lot of value in some respects with what you get for the car. But bearing in mind it's under £40,000. This doesn't start till £47,000. But it's there. We've got to mention it. It's a new, it's like an electric Chinese brand, but falling under the Stellantis umbrella. Remember that as well. Right, so there you go. So while we're talking about Stellantis as well, why don't we mention stuff like the Peugeot E3008? Because that's a car I think is very similar in its stature, you know, SUV, electric SUV, but with more of a coupe style to it, and dare I suggest quite stylised in some ways, you know, very different interior I think you get with the Peugeot. You know, they've got long range battery available to it, big range they talk about in that car. But bear in mind, whilst it sits on their STLA medium platform, which is designed to be a battery electric vehicle first, you can also get that in multi-energy drivetrain, so you get it hybrid as well. Okay, so there's that one. Right, so there's also the Vauxhall Grandland, but again, it's sort of a big SUV that's sort of more designed towards things like the Skoda Enyaq, full size, Volkswagen ID4, those style of cars. I think this is a bit more the stylized coupe style of coupe SUVs we've seen of late, which means we're also going to talk about the Cupra Tavascan. And obviously from its Volkswagen Group stablemates, then you've got things such as the Volkswagen ID5, the Audi Q4 e-tron and the Skoda Enyaq Coupe. Another car I'm about to, it's had a big facelift, I'm driving that at the end of next week, so that'll be interesting. We've also got to talk about things such as the Hyundai Ioniq 5, because I think there's a lot of commonality to this. You know, physically big car, lots of room inside, you know, sort of very different interior, and as a brand, Hyundai have really upped their game. You know, maybe once seen as a budget brand in the UK, no longer that way. Same with Kia, the EV6, still one of our favourites, still a car that a lot of people consider to be one of the best in its class when it comes to that. So there's that car to talk about. Oh, and if we're talking about the premium stuff, then we've also got to mention the Genesis GV60, which shares the platform, the eGMP platform with the Hyundai and the Kia. So you could also consider the Genesis GV60's arrival to this car. Ooh, Toyota BZ4X, yes, that could be a rival for this car. And if we mention the BZ4X, you've also got to think of the Subaru Solterra. Not the best when it comes to efficiency in some ways, but this facelifted car coming, I'm told they're a lot better. I have driven an updated car, and it was better than that first one that I drove. You could also consider the Lexus RZ, the 300, the single motor car, as a competitor for this. That sneaks below the £50,000 now, which is interesting, and I'm going to be driving that car very soon as well. What else have I made a note of? Nissan Ariya. We always forget the Nissan Ariya, and Nissan's not in a good way either in terms of a company, but I tell you what, the Ariya is a brilliant product, and that should be considered as well. And why not some of the sportier models, the BMW iX2, the Mercedes-Benz EQA, and maybe the Volvo EC40. So there's three cars, premium badges, sporty looking, sort of like SUV coupe style of cars. You know, it has starting price around about sort of like the £50,000 mark. Those are cars you could consider as well. I'm probably missing quite a few there, but there's, oh, Ford, the Capri. Why did I forget about the Capri? Probably because it's so forgettable, Brian. But anyway, the Ford Capri. Let's remember that car's there as well. A lot of interior space, big boot as well, and Ford familiar badge. Certainly not the best in its class when it comes to the way that it drives, but there'll be some people out there thinking that that could be a car that they would consider as well. So what I'm trying to say is, rather than elegantly, there's lots of choice out there for your money. So here's what we like, and also what we don't like about the new BYD Sealion 7. Well, we like its design. It is very spacious. It's well equipped as standard across all models. And the use of materials and the feeling of quality is way better than even some more established premium brands in this class. We don't like, well, those advanced driver assistance systems are still a little bit overzealous for us. There's nothing special in terms of its range or efficiency given its battery sizes. The chassis feels a little underwhelming when it comes to the actual drive of the car, and it's not exactly a bargain. I'm quite divided about this car. Let me explain why. Because on the one hand, what we have here is potential to be BYD's best product to date. It's a really good looking car. I think it's one of the best looking to date. It's really spacious. In terms of it being a family car, there's nothing else you could really want for. There's a huge amount of standard equipment with the car. You know, you don't have to go for that top of the range car or add different packs to it. The lead-in car is exceptionally well equipped as standard. And also in terms of its interior, the way the interior is designed, the use of materials and the build quality is not only, dare I suggest, better than some of the more volume orientated cars in its class, it's better than some of the legacy premium brands that are in this class. So from that point of view, there's a huge amount to suggest that this car is going to be a real winner. However, there is the other side of it, which for me just falls a little bit short. First of all, the dynamics. Now, I'm not suggesting that it needs to be a pin-sharp driver's tool. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is it just falls a little bit short for me in terms of the way that it drives. There's a slight disconnection between you as a driver and the car. And it can't make up for that in other ways. That's it. You know, it's not bad. You know, I don't want you to think of it as a bad car to drive. And it's not got far to go till it is a good car to drive. But I can't ignore the fact that it's not quite good enough. Then there's the other side of it as well, the batteries. Now, considering BYD started their life as a battery technology company, I would have expected a little bit better from them. The range, the charging speed, the efficiency, they're all just about average. And it needs to be better than average. That's the thing, because the price of it, well, let's just say they've priced it very confidently. And that for me is where it falls down right at the last hurdle. Because if you're going to charge the level of money that BYD are charging for this car, and please don't get me wrong, in some respects, they've got every right to do that because they have established themselves now. And there's a lot to suggest that it should be that level of money. But you need to be better than average for that money. That's my point. You know, as I say, I'd expected better efficiency, a better range, better charging speeds for the car, given the fact that you can get that for less money from more established brands in the market space. And that's it. When it comes down to the end of it, that's my big problem. This market space is so overwhelmed with cars that are good. To be merely average isn't good enough. You've really got to be something special. And that was what Tesla did really well. They were the disruptors that came in and did that. Now, as I say, we can argue all day long about whether or not Tesla has lost its shine or not. But let's just say there are plenty of other brands out there now that are certainly willing to take the shine from them, to take that crown from Tesla. And that's why BYD needed to be slightly better than this car can offer. It's good, it's just not good enough. Thank you for watching yet another road test review on AutoEV. As always, please make sure you are subscribed to the AutoEV channel. Then once you've done that, make sure you press the little bell button that's down below, because that's the way you'll be notified when the next video is uploaded and it's gone live. If you have enjoyed this week's review, and I hope you have, then make sure you give it a little thumbs up, and of course don't forget, leave me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Would you have this over a Skoda Enyaq, or a Kia EV6, or a Hyundai Ioniq 5, or a Tesla Model Y, or a BMW iX2? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Also as well, have you bought a BYD? What's your dealership experience been like? What did you like about it? What made you buy it? What made you not buy it if you went down the route of another car? Let me know those thoughts in the comment section as well, because I am interested in that. Now remember, we're across all social medias as well, so if you're into your Facebook, your Instagrams, your TikToks, your LinkedIns, your X's, all the rest of it, give us a follow there as well, because that certainly helps the channel. And if you're interested in getting yourself an electric car, might not be a new BYD Sealion 7, maybe you're interested in a second-hand Atto 3, but you need to know a bit more about it before you go and sign in the dotted line. How do you find out? Well, here's how. Stay on the homepage on the AutoEV YouTube channel. Just at the top there's a magnifying glass. Type the name of the car you're interested in buying in there, and if it's been a new electric car in the UK in the last 6 years, then of course we've subjected it to the road test that actual car buyers trust when it comes to choosing their next electric car. And that, folks, is the AutoEV one. Thank you again for supporting the channel. Thank you again for watching. I'll see you again soon.